or take it off, adjust it evenly on each side, and then try it again. But there's how we start we determine our range of motion, because I offered him a short range right here. We took about 6 inches of slack out, and he can practice a short range squat. This is perfect because he's not going very deep, and he can figure out, hey, how's my back aligned? How's my leg aligned? How's this feel? Am I letting my rib cage drop, which is letting my spine cave in and round on me? Now see, the next thing we got to take a look at, watch right here. See how his feet are a little wider than shoulder width, and this new Bowflex Xtreme 2 has a great platform for this, and they're also pointed outward. As you move your feet wider, you've got to also change their angle. Do you see that? And he's got his toes very slightly wider than his heels, and his thighs are going to go the same direction that his feet are pointing. This is critical. And every time he's done this, I've watched over the past couple reps, and he's done it perfectly every time. What you have to pay attention to is that you're not letting your knees go to the center. Can you show them that? How knees, not necessarily forward, but how some people go down, their knees go towards the center. Yeah, some people do this. And it's not just a male versus female thing, although some people say it's more common in females to head that direction. And there's a lot of reasons why this can happen. It can be actually occurring in the foot, in the knee, in the hip. But the thing I would like for you to do is use your control to point your knees out in the direction of your toes. So these angles are congruent, going the same direction. And once you get pretty good at making sure all these things are happening, then we can add some more range. And I'm going to just make it a little bit lower on you. And how deep you end up going in your squat is going to be a function of not only your control, but the amount of weight you choose, and things like, how's your knee doing? If you've got arthritis, if you've got knee problems, you're going to need to alter all these things. But that's not a bad squat right there. Some people say you have to squat to parallel and that kind of stuff. Parallel meaning when your thigh gets parallel to the ground. But we're just short of that here. He's squatting to a roughly 90-degree bend in the knee, which is short of parallel. He would get a great workout from this. There's not any reason to go deeper. If you have a goal that specifically requires you to go deeper, just realize you're doing so at your own risk. And you may like that feeling even, but it's not necessarily more beneficial. If you honestly think it's more beneficial for your goal to go deeper, then go ahead and do it with caution. One of the nice things about the Bowflex is as you're going deeper, the rods are bending less and less. So at the top is where the rods bend the most and where you're getting the most resistance. That's a nice resistance profile for this exercise. Let's take a look at some calf exercises. We've actually got 2 variations we can perform here on the Bowflex Xtreme 2. And then we're going to use the platform down here in 2 ways, not only for the pulleys and their resistance, but this is also going to be the block or slight step on which we're going to perform the range of motion. So Josh, come around here. The first one we're going to do is just a single leg movement. And there's a reason for that, because in order to hold the resistance, you're going to use one arm, and just go ahead and put your left foot up on here. Yeah, and then we'll have the weight in the left hand. And then he's going to use his right hand to help stabilize. And the reason we're starting with this one is because the next version is going to require some stability from you, some active support and active balance. But you notice right here the key things. His whole ball of his foot is up on the platform. Can you see that? So it's not just his toes. Some people call this a toe raise, and we're not raising the toes, we're actually raising the heel. And the whole ball of your foot is up on here. And he's controlling down as far as he can go without just resting on the floor. And then he's lifting up. Now, if you really want to get something out of this exercise like never before, then don't just rock around. Take great effort in going real slow for me, Josh. Think about lifting the heel, pulling it towards the knee, and go as high as you can every time. Do you see that little bit of extra right there? Can't promise you calves like Josh's, but I can promise you a sensation you never had before. Because most people either don't work calves or they really do the easiest part of the range and they don't get a lot out of them. So take your time to do it right and go all the way up. Now when you get pretty good at balancing and that kind of thing, you could do both sides by grabbing both handles. Be careful how you pick them up. Put the balls of your feet up there on the platform, and then real slowly bring your heels up towards your knees, and then real slowly go down, because so many times people get up to the top and they just fall out of this top position. Use those muscles. If you're going to work them 100% of the time, all the way up, and every inch on the way down, make them do their job. There you go. I want to show you two hip extension exercises, and they're a little bit different. They will work virtually the same muscles with slightly different contributions from those guys. So the first one, and to hook this up, you've got to take a look because you're using the triple function grip and putting it through that arch cuff, and you need to review through the very beginning of the DVD or the tape and see how to set that up, because that's critical, and it's a great function for this hand grip that's actually very rare. You won't find very many hand grips in the world that are able to do this, but it's so useful on these exercises we're performing right now, because if you just put an ankle cuff up here, it'll want to slide up your leg, and this keeps it from doing that. So the first one, we're going to keep the knee relatively straight, and you do not have to lock it out, but the idea is to keep it really near the straight position and keep it there the whole time. Now, Josh is going to extend his hip back, and he's going to do his best not to move much up here in the trunk. And he goes, and here's the thing. Most people, in terms of range of motion, can only straighten to where their leg is in line with their trunk. So if you watch somebody that's really getting their leg up real high, there's a pretty good chance that they did that by moving, all this other stuff. And maybe even by holding this still, but just moving in the pelvis, like that. So watch and see what you've got here, because more is not always better, especially if it's coming from an entirely different place. Now, this is a glute and hamstring activity. Those are the major hip extensor muscles. But this is not a spot reducing exercise. I don't care if you do 8 million of them. It will not reduce fat from your bottom, okay? No exercise, no single exercise alone can do that. That's a matter of building muscle underneath, and then how you eat and the other activities you perform to help you burn calories, and that's the best way to get rid of the deposits of stored energy called fat. So now we can make a modification of this where we bend the knee and keep the knee bent. It's going to change the hamstring contribution of this exercise a little bit. And notice he's still doing the hip extension. Can you go up any higher? It gets a little tougher, because in essence that hamstring is not working quite as hard, believe it or not, even though your knee's bent. It's not working as hard. It might be working to keep your knee bent, but it's not necessarily working at this joint as much anymore. So it's a little bit harder to get as high. You might even have to use a little bit lighter weight if you choose this exercise. They're both fine exercises. They're both great for what they do, but they're not magic. The key is performing them correctly. This is hip abduction, A-B as in boy, duction. And the whole word means that we're moving the leg outward. So, the resistance from the lower platform here, we've just tried this multiple ways, and the thing that worked best for Amy was to move this to the furthest out pulley, the widest pulley, and put the ankle cuff around her ankle, slide it up tight so the foam is around her ankle and it's comfortable. And she can use her arm to hang on to either the crossbar or the seat, whichever works best for you. You're going to have to turn your whole body to find out which way you're going to exactly move and how it works relative to the machine. Stay away from the power rods as they go through their flexing motion. But start from about midline here and move outward. And you don't have to have a lot of motion. In fact, if you're moving way out there, there's a good chance that you move the other hip, that you bent in the spine, that you're doing a lot of other things that are not necessarily what you're trying to do. So just control all this, make the motion move straight outward to keep the leg pretty straight the whole time, and you're not going to spot reduce here. You're not going to lose fat here. You're not going to get rid of saddlebags or whatever the popular term is this day for anything you don't want out here. The thing you're doing is strengthening really vital muscles, very important muscles. She can probably even feel the same muscles working on this side where you're standing. These are muscles that are important to gait, important to standing, important to posture, important to every aspect of your life. And if you want to worry about fat, that's a totally other subject. You need to be exercising for the right reasons, and that's strength and controlling your muscles and improving the overall metabolism by increasing some muscle mass. Now there are a lot of different places in and around this machine where you can perform hip adduction, adduction, which is basically resisted movement of your leg back towards your body. Now you can try it off to the side, you can try it with different pulley positions on the platform. Here is one version. It's a little bit different from what's in the manual. You might try them both, but this seemed to work well for Amy, who has a pretty good range of motion in this. And where she's standing, she's using the pulley from from this side of the machine that's all the way out in its widest setting while standing clear across the machine. Now the idea is to start with the leg out to the side and have resisted movement back across. Now obviously she has to hold this leg up a little bit to get over the other pulley, but that doesn't hurt a thing and it doesn't affect really what's working here. So it's not a bad idea, and that way she can go to near midline, maybe slightly cross, but you'll notice that if she really try to go over there for a minute, to really try to go over there like a ton of motion comes from other things, moving the other leg, moving the trunk, all that stuff. So don't, again, worry about how far you move, because sometimes you get clear out beyond what you originally started, what you set out to do and what you set out to work. So this is not a bad version of this. You can try some of your own if you want to, especially if you don't have as much motion and you don't have to perform quite as much motion. But this is a nice challenge for what Amy has available in terms of range. This exercise is called the lower extremity or leg kickback. And you're only going to perform one side at a time, and it's going to be a combination of motions. So the first thing you do is set up on the platform here, pulley setting narrow on one side, and use the ankle cuff grip. And you may have to refer back to the beginning part of this DVD or videotape to make sure that you got this set up right, because done right, this will be an awesome type of grip for a lot of these things, especially movements like this. Now Amy is going to lean forward and grab hold of the pad, and her body is going to remain at this angle right here. And she's not going to let any of this move. She's got her other leg bent and supporting her body. Now this next thing she does, she bends the knee, bends the hip, and then drives straight back and straightens the hip and the knee. Now, here's the key. Not only is she not moving any of this in her trunk, watch the direction she's pushing. If she tries to push too high, you're going to notice it's really hard for her to straighten her leg. She might not be able to do it. But she chooses an angle that's slightly back and downward that allows full extension of the knee and full extension of the hip. Now, a lot of people will try to move all this around to get more and more motion and higher motion, but keeping this trunk stable and in perfect alignment is a really good idea. Now, this is a great strengthening exercise, even for this other side, because it is working over here, right? Just holding and supporting her weight. A lot of people will think, oh, this is going to be great because I'm going to spot reduce something, I'm going to get rid of fat here. And again, we know that that's not true, but this is a great strengthening exercise. This is resisted hip flexion. And there may not be a lot of people that want to perform this, but if you ever do for any sports-related reason, or even sometimes in rehab, there's reasons to do it. But here's a great way to do it on the Bowflex Xtreme 2. We're going to use the platform pulley from the opposite side in its widest position and use the ankle cuff and kind of position it so the foam pad is around the front of the ankle and it's coming off the back so that the resistance won't drag across the side of his foot or anything. He's going to keep his knee bent, and he's going to keep an upright position where he's looking forward the whole time, and then slowly bring that knee up into the front. Now the range that he chooses to perform will determine what happens in his spine here. In fact, can I get you to hold this up for 1 second here, Josh? Because we need to see what's going on here. As he goes through the motion, the higher he goes, try to go even higher, he's going to end up with some spinal flexion and maybe even bending in the back leg. So if starting out, you may just go really short like this, which will keep this from moving. And then if you have a reason to go up higher, but then you need to decide. You have to decide, do I want to stabilize this or do I want it to move? And there's a variety of reasons why you might want to do each. But that's going to take a little more study on your part to find out beyond just this general exercise tape which way you're going to want it for specific goals. But you probably won't go much higher than up here where the thigh is parallel to the ground. And then of course, when he's finished with that leg, like all the lower extremity exercises, if you want to be symmetrical and you want to do both sides, you're going to have to swap everything around, come over here and do the hip flexion for the right leg this other direction. This traditional version of the deadlift can be formed really well on the platform of the Bowflex Xtreme 2. We're going to use the bar that you use for some bar curls and squats and that kind of thing. We won't need any webbing extension this time because we're going to want to come down as low as we can, or at least work to that direction. Now Josh is going to grab it a little wider than his knees, about shoulder width or so. And because the very first lifting of the bar is his first repetition, he's really got to pay attention here. So he's going to keep his head in line with his body by kind of looking down there, and get this back straight by sticking his bottom out. If he keeps his bottom tucked under, he's going to have this big rounded thing in his low back that is not what we want. So he's nice and flat. It's kind of like a squat, knees pointed the same direction as the toes, and he's going to use his entire lower extremity while keeping this position of his spine stable, and slowly stand up, letting the bar go right past the knees and pull up to the thigh. Now as he returns to that position, every single thing he paid such great attention to before has got to be maintained. And it's really nice because the resistance of the power rods actually gives you a little less resistance when you're down here at the bottom, which is the tougher part of the range, and a little more resistance up at the top where you would potentially not even be working if you were using a free weight. Notice he also keeps his shoulder blades pinched back a little bit so that as the weight pulls on his arms, it doesn't round his shoulders off to create a kind of a crummy posture there. Now, you could use the adjustable webbing in here if you knew for sure that you couldn't pull from this depth right at this starting place. You could start from virtually right here with the adjustable webbing and stop about right there if you wanted to, and then stand straight up. So if you had the webbing, you would not even have to start but from right here. So that might be something to think about, and then progress to lower and lower ranges, working your way all the way down to the maximum right there. This is involving everything that's involved in a regular squat. Hamstrings, quads, even little calf muscles, a lot of low back and hips. This is the stiff leg deadlift. And this is absolutely one of the toughest exercises to do correctly. I would consider it advanced even. And we're going to start out by having Josh stand on the platform. We're in the wide pulley setting, and we've got the straight bar attached. And I'm going to go ahead and have him do kind of a traditional deadlift kind of a thing to lift it up to the top position. Keeping his back in a perfect position, using his entire leg. Now here's the key to this exercise, and you're going to see it from the side view over here. Everything about this exercise is determined by the low back. So, as he starts to bend forward, here's the first thing. He's going to stick his bottom out. Don't go any further for a second. Do you see how he started by, come back up, moving this backward? That's very different than trying to stay here and move the top part forward. Don't even think about that. That'll not only mess with your balance, it'll be a totally different thing in your mind and neurologically. So your goal is to keep the spinal position, but slowly start putting your hips backward. And you're kind of trying to keep your knees near straight. And he did not go any further than what his back could remain straight for. There you go. So that's the motion that he performed. Now what you need to do, if you only move, do it just a real short one, Josh. If you can only go this far and then come back up, because that's from the side view, you can tell that that's the only way you can keep your spine in right alignment, then that's the place to stop. That's okay. And as you get better at controlling, you'll be able to go down further and further. Now, if a slight bend occurs in the knee, if a slight position change occurs in the knee, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Because your hamstring tension, how tight your hamstrings are, is going to determine whether you'll really be able to keep your knees near straight or have to let them bend a little bit. And if you try to keep your knees straight and you have really poor hamstring flexibility, then your back, you won't be able to go anywhere because your back will start to bend right in the middle. Then we're not going to want that. So those are the key points. Your hips will move backwards first, your back will stay straight the whole time, and we're not really that concerned about how stiff-legged your knees are. In other words, let them float a little bit. Another thing you can do, Josh, and a lot of people have a tendency to look up and stay looking up the whole time. If that bothers your neck, and it will for a lot of people, go ahead and look down at the floor as you bend forward so you're not going into extreme cervical extension up there and causing a lot of tension in this area. What you should be feeling is not only some glutes, but a tremendous amount of hamstring activity here. You can't really separate the two. They're always trying to do the same thing at the hip, both those groups of muscles. But the hamstrings, because of the limited knee movement, should feel like one of the predominant muscles involved.